Welcome to the Behind the Shield podcast. As always, my name's James Gearing, and this week it is my absolute honor to welcome back onto the show veteran lineman and the man behind the Powerline Podcast, Ryan Lucas. In the second conversation, we discuss a host of topics, from his unique perspective on the pandemic, the selfless courage of our linemen during storms and the most recent ice storm, the recruitment crises in the trades, reinvesting in domestic industry, the impact of AI servers on our grids, and so much more. Now, before we get to this incredible conversation, as I say every week, please just take a moment. Go to whichever app you listen to this on, subscribe to the show, leave feedback, and leave a rating. Every single 5-star rating truly does elevate this podcast, therefore making it easier for others to find. And this is a free library of almost 1,200 episodes now. So all I ask in return is that you help share these incredible men and women's stories so I can get them to every single person on planet Earth who needs to hear them. So with that being said, I welcome back onto the show, Ryan Lucas. Enjoy. Well, Ryan, I want to say welcome back. You and I have gone back and forth for years and years and years. I can actually remember when we had our first conversation and we discussed the podcast because I was driving in a rainstorm in Southern California, and you kind of kept me company while I was going up PCH. But when you came on the show was episode 268, which was January 12th, 2020. So the world was a little different when we first sat down. So with all that being said, before we even dive into that, I want to welcome you back onto the Behind the Shield podcast.
James, it's honestly a pleasure. Like I told you on the first time you had me on, you're honestly one of the reasons I started my own podcast. You've been a leader in podcasting. You've done it for years and just cranked episodes out. You've been an inspiration. So yeah, like now I'm honored to be back, dude, for sure.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for all of that. Let's start as the icebreaker, even though I want to get to the winter storm and breaking ice in a little bit. Let's start with what the 2020 moving on looked like for you. The reason I think it's so important to keep revisiting that time is, so I don't know if it was the same in Canada, but certainly here in the US and the UK, once we emerged from it, there was a refusal to have any discussion as to what went right, what went wrong, what will we different, what we do differently, how can we make our nation healthier, et cetera, et cetera. So all we have now is conversations retroactively so that we can at least pull some lessons from it. So what was your experience as it started sweeping through Canada? And then let's talk about any takeaways that you have.
I love this. I got a really unique perspective on it. And without diving into too much of the politics of it, so my perspective was I took a training job. So I took a job as the lead instructor for a Powerline school because I'm a tradesman. I'm a journeyman lineman. So I took an instructing job in Texas at a training facility, advanced electrical training facility in Texas. So I was traveling during the entire pandemic from Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada to Texas. And it was this like really, first off, like eerie, unusual experience when you roll up to a border crossing that's usually, 2-hour, 3-hour wait to get across. And you're the only car. It felt really like almost like third world-ish, like you roll it up to this border and you're the only one there and there's only one crossing and, all of the things. People are fully bubble suited up coming to you, what are you doing here? And I would present my paperwork and it was like, okay, sir, see ya. Thanks for doing what you do. Carry on. And I would use the land border crossing because traveling by air across the border was really difficult, was more difficult than the land border crossing for me. So I'd use the land border crossing, then I would fly out of Seattle to Texas. So as you guys all know, Texas treated the pandemic one way, and Vancouver, BC, or BC or Canada treated it completely different. It was like, bubble suits in Canada and Texas. I have this funny story. So I was at a steakhouse before returning to Canada. I was at a steakhouse in this little town in Texas, and this, typical tall guy, all tucked in, squared away, cowboy hat, a pistol on his hip, in the steakhouse, having a steak. Nobody's wearing masks. Nobody's 6 feet apart. Nobody's any of that. Like, it was normal life. And, he'd stand up to pay for his dinner, and he literally pulls out a wad of cash from his pocket, licks his fingers, peels the cash, lays it on the table, and walks out. So I got this happening. The very next day, I'm flying back to Canada, and it's full bubble suits, full interrogations, it's COVID testing, it's shots, it's all this stuff, right? And just that dichotomy of experiencing that. So then I'd go home to my family members, visit them over Christmas or anything like that. And I come from a very small town in central BC, Canada. It's a blue collar forestry mining town. A lot of people in that town don't really get out too much. If they do, it's like a Mexico vacation every year. Like they don't really have a big world view of things. And here I am crossing borders, dealing with airports, thousands of people every month, 2 airports, 3 airports, 4 airports a month. That's my experience. I'm going home and I'm trying to tell them, don't be so fearful, have a little bit of an open mind. So that's my point of view on it. And that's my perspective on it. That's what I've tried to implement to people is when things like this happen, expand your mind a little bit, get off social media, or, be on social media, but just have an open mind at least, and go talk to real humans with different experiences, in real time experiences, because a lot of my family members just, treated it the whole, this is what I'm seeing on Facebook. Everyone needs to be fearful, and I'm like, it's not like that. I never got COVID, and I literally was traveling like this every month. It is what it is. Maybe I didn't for some reason, but it wasn't as big, bad, and scary for a lot of people. And I understand, I'm respectful of, we did lose people because of it. There's probably other reasons associated with that. But again, just that whole open-mindedness, I think, is super important. Even look at our times right now, super important. Keep an open mind, check different perspectives. And that's kind of what I go out of the pandemic with.
Yeah. I mean, I've said this on here many, many times. There was one truth during the whole pandemic. The healthier the population, the higher chance there is of them surviving being exposed to the virus. And so when you look at what was told to people on that fearful side, as you said, it was stay at home, don't see your family and friends, get food delivered, get alcohol delivered, binge watch Tiger King. And then obviously when you're staying at home, you're not getting any exposure to nature. You're not getting sun on your skin. You're not getting exercise. And I've said this many times, if you could actually write down how would you make people even more vulnerable to a virus, that's exactly it. Conversely, what should have been said, and I've always put it this way, if you believe in vaccines, and this one was obviously up in the air as far as efficacy, then you want to have the healthiest immune system you can to have a healthy response to that vaccine to then build the immunity. If you don't believe in vaccines, you want to have the healthiest body you can so you have a healthy immune response to the virus. So the common denominator is the healthy body. And we know, and I was, hailed as a heretic early on, we know that the comorbidities were a big, massive reason why people died from COVID. And yes, there's anomalies of seemingly fit people, but I know a lot of seemingly fit people that have, heart attacks out of the blue, that have, aneurysms out of the blue. It happens and it's tragic, but you don't negate, the wisdom of the masses from these, unusual medical cases. There was a definite understanding that if you get outside and you spend time with your loved ones, and again, you don't have to be licking each other's faces, but, you're moving, you're getting vitamin D, all these things that we know, you're going to have a much healthier outcome. And then more importantly, as you emerge from something like this, the number one priority should be the health of your nation, ready for the next time, whatever we name the next virus, Steve the Badger Master, or whatever the fuck we're going to call the next one that's going to freak everyone out. The healthy population is going to do well. And look at Norway, look at Sweden, look at Portugal, look at these places that really, like you were saying, took it very seriously at the beginning, started to open it up like we did in Florida. But Scandinavia has a very healthy population. They were demonized by the rest of the world, and they had some of the lowest deaths of anywhere per capita. So these conversations are important because we have to pull the common sense out of the political trench warfare that was going on, so that we, the planet, can learn from it and be ready for the next time.
This is something I've put a lot of effort into in the last year and a half. I just family scenarios, the stress of the pandemic, all of that. I gained weight. I started to get unhealthy, and I took a look at myself and I was like, this can't go on. And it sounds like it needs a drastic change, but it's not that drastic. Getting healthy isn't, if you just take it one day at a time, one bite at a time, implement one thing at a time, you can turn around a massive amount in a year, in 6 months. That's what I did. 50 pounds in 1 year, gone. Just implementing simple things, James. People always want that crazy thing that's just going to do it, that magic thing, right? There's a lot of magic things kind of coming out now, shots and things like that. But if you just break it down to simple things, stop eating like an asshole, get outside, get some vitamin D, go for a walk. You don't have to start running freaking marathons like everybody's doing right now. It's great to have all of those people online, on social media, being that inspiration, being that motivation, doing 15 marathons a month. But that, the average everyday normal person does not need to do that in order to make huge gains in your life, A few things I've done that are they're mine. They're what's worked for me, but they're super simple. Tim Ferriss just talked about it on a podcast on the Sean Ryan show. He called it morning pages. So just Tim's always lived, he's had fears and anxieties and things like that. He's been pretty open about talking about them online, right? So this has been huge for him. And I've just been naturally doing this because I just heard this pod, but naturally doing this is writing every morning, just getting what's in your head down on paper, stream of thought, get out your fears, get out your anxieties, get all these things just out of your head onto paper. It's made a massive difference in my mental health, how I attack the day, my productivity in the day, those sorts of things. That's helped. Walking has been an anchor for me. If I need to get over anything, if I need to organize my head, organize my thoughts, just getting out for 1 hour, it's 8,000 steps, 8,000 to 10,000 steps in an hour. It's perfect. You're outside in nature, all of those benefits. It's simple things. Plus you're losing weight, you're working on your cardio, all of these things. It's not complicated stuff. You don't overcomplicate it. It's simple. It really is.
I had a conversation the other day, and it was interesting because we were talking about firefighter recruitment. I think it was with one of the British firefighters I had on the show. And with the GLP-1 shots that you were referring to, it's funny how opposed some groups were to shots, and all of a sudden they'll stick it anywhere in the body now if it will help them lose weight. But what is an interesting conversation, and I'm sure it's the same in your profession, is, and I think they have an application. My wife lost her best friend. I lost one of my fire academy friends to gastric bypass, complications from. Neither of them, I would argue, were actually really dangerously obese. They were obese, but not, they were young enough, I think, to really be able to address it in different ways. And I think both of them, the GLP-1s, actually would have been a great tool alongside trying to change dietary habits and exercise habits. But we're seeing that as the easy button now. What is interesting to me is, say you have a deconditioned young man who was overweight, and now wants to go and become a lineman or a firefighter and uses the pill, there's no sweat equity in that. And I'm not saying that, you don't deserve to be thin unless you fought for it kind of thing. But if you've just used that, you haven't experienced suffering. You haven't done the strength training. You haven't worked on the cardio. So you may look like you're fighting fit when you walk through the door, but you don't have that background of like you said, the discomfort that it takes to actually, either for someone who's heavier, lose the weight and be ready to be a firefighter, or in my case, be a skinny beanpole and have to put the work in to be strong enough to be a firefighter. So what's your perception on that with the weight loss without the exercise behind it, as far as a very physical profession like ours?
My point of view on it is it's an and thing. So it's this and that. So if you're like morbidly obese, I have got nothing against going and getting a GLP-1, prescription from your doctor and getting on that treatment plan, because like if it's going to take you from morbidly obese down to like a healthy weight and get you to the point where you can get outside and walk or run or, lift weights and get you comfortable going into a gym now because you're not that uncomfortable with your body and stuff like. So if it's going to knock all of that down and get you out and get you active, let's go. I'm all for it. Really, I am. Do it. Like, go after it. But as far as like now joining a workforce like the trades, I think that's where we have to really look at the training programs within the trades or, first responders or something. Like, what's the rejection criteria look like? How do we recognize those people and identify, maybe some of them need help. Like they actually want to do it and they just need guidance and help and training and, proper programs to get them to that point. But we have to be able to identify that. And that's on us. We can't just like let them squeak in. And especially in line work, you won't be able to, like, you'll be very quickly identified as someone that can't take it. And it's kind of like the trades and especially line work. There can be a natural selection process, like just a qualifying, like almost like qualifying stage, like not unlike the military or first responders. I'm sure it's not hazing, but it's like, we're like the vets are going to let you know that you're not up to snuff pretty quick. Yeah.
I wrote a story in my first book. And it was something that I witnessed when I was you did a test and then you did like physical test and written test and a medical skills test. And then they shared your results with fire departments all around the South of Florida. And so I'm at this kind of version of the combat challenge, like a firefighter physical test. And at the beginning, these two guys, were walking around and bright orange bodybuilders, their skinny little vest was barely hanging on. And to my naive, just fresh out of fire academy eyes, I was like, well, these guys must be phenomenal athletes, because I mean, they're cockerelling around like they own the farmyard. And which was very bizarre because everyone else was nervous and, chomping at the bit to try and get a job in a very competitive market. It was weird to kind of have that kind of, physicality. But I'll never forget the first one went, the bigger of the, muscular tangerines went first. And I'm not exaggerating. He made it up 2 flights of stairs and tapped out. Now we're just doing this in gym stuff. And I think it was a helmet and gloves. That was it. So you're not even wearing bunker gear and a tank. 2 flights of stairs and gassed. And then as if scripted, a few rotations later when his friends, turn, same exact place. And what I realized is that looking like you can do the job and being able to do the job are 2 very different things. And I think this is an important conversation. It's coming from compassion and empathy. It's not judgmental, but if you are on a weight loss journey with a GLP-1, which we're witnessing is very effective, and you're thinking about a trade, first responder profession, the military, understand that alone isn't going to cut it. And so just like you said, it's a great adjunct to then, your on-ramp into strength and conditioning training. and suffering, because you're going to have to deal with some shit in these jobs. You got to be able to be comfortable being uncomfortable, to sound cliche. But I think this is a really good time to be talking about that, because if there's a potential man or woman that's entering one of these professions and you're on this journey, good for you. But know that if you start doing the work as well, not only is it going to amplify your weight loss, but now you're going to start working towards being ready when you do toe the line. But if it's a fallacy of, well, now I'm the right weight for this job, it's a kudos to everyone who's lost the weight through just sheer hard work and diet and discipline. They're going to get it by the time they get to that right weight, because they've suffered immensely. But because there is this shortcut now, and I agree with you, it absolutely has an application. Now is a great time to have that conversation of like, hey, if you are using this and it's going to work, think about starting that strength conditioning journey now as well, so that when you hit that target weight, you have done the conditioning too. Because otherwise you're going to find yourself looking exactly like you said, looking like you can do the job, failing that initial test miserably, and then you have to go and do some soul searching. So I think it's an exciting conversation to get people thinking about that when they begin this journey.
The other thing I'd pair off of that as well. So there's the strength and conditioning component to that, which 100% agree with you. Go work on that anyway. And I can talk a little bit more about that and the reasons for strength and conditioning for the trades. But there's the mindset component behind it as well. So that person that's gone and suffered to, eat right, be disciplined, lose the weight through pure suffering, they've gained a component of mindset that the others haven't as well. And that mindset going into, especially like I can speak directly to the Powerline industry, when you've got to go into, for example, like storms, hurricanes, everyone's familiar with mass hurricanes, linemen are going into the cities, in the middle of the eye of the hurricane, sleeping in their trucks, waiting for it to blow everything down so that they can jump right into fixing it. And while everyone else is leaving the city, leaving home, leaving the country, leaving the state, getting out. And that's not just like everyone that lives there, but that's everyone that lives there and works there and has businesses. So like these linemen are going there and there's no food, there's no shelter. There's, like I said, they're sleeping in their trucks and they're working 16, 18, 20-hour days, like literally sleeping on the job to get 4 hours of sleep just to continue to serve, to continue to restore power, which means restoring some sort of normalcy to life, right? There's a mindset component to that. Like, let's carry on. And not only that, the people that stay behind, like the regular civilians that stay behind, a lot of the time, not all the time, so don't get on me for this one, but a lot of the time, they're not very understanding, respectful, of what these men and women are going through to restore that normalcy. They can get treated with a lot of disrespect, a lot of anger, angst, all of that stuff, for good reasons. Like their power's out, their life's been destroyed, they've maybe lost their home, whatever the reasons are, but that gets directed on whoever's around. And those people are first responders and linemen, line crews, right? So you got to be able to deal with that too, right? So there's the mindset component behind this as well. And if you just lose weight, like it just falls off of you because you took a GLP-1 and you go to get in a trade like line work or military EMS, like you need to work on that mindset component too, not just the physical side of it. It's both.
Absolutely. You just made me think about something as well. One of the most beautiful things about the pandemic, apart from the environmental impact in a positive way, which sadly was disregarded after about 6 months. But, watching, the sky clear up in LA, watching dolphins swim upstream in the Venice Canal and some of the incredible things that we saw. But the other thing was appreciation for the people we take for granted. So, whether it's the bin men, as we call them in England, the people that take the garbage away, whether it's, the people that stock the shelves in the stores and, the checkout clerks and everyone that we just kind of, don't really give two thoughts about. finally, got some appreciation. Obviously, first responders and doctors and nurses and everyone else that keeps the hospital running as well. But kind of like you hear this I miss 9/12 conversation where there was that gratitude and there was that coming together and fuck me, do we need that more now than ever? But, fast forward a few years and now dying firefighters are, fighting the city of New York to try and get coverage for their families after they die. And all of a sudden it's a different conversation. What did you see about as far as the gratitude for linemen during COVID? And then, has that dropped off as well?
This gratitude for linemen. So this awareness for linemen has been something that people in the line community have been pulling for awareness of us and what we do for years and decades. It's only like these hurricanes recently or these mass storm events that have like bring awareness to line workers. And a lot of the times, so during these events, when you get like these mass outages, you get line workers from all over the world, all over the country, congregate to one area to restore power. A lot of them do it, not every lineman does it for service to other people. A lot of them do it because it is really good money as well, right? And you get these storm chasers. So unfortunately and fortunately, those are the events that raise the most awareness for what we do. Like I said, you get the good, the bad, the ugly. Line work on a day-to-day basis is what I'm into promoting. I'm into raising awareness of is our grid in the United States needs to at least double in the next 5 years. And most people don't quite understand what that actually means. That means a huge amount of direct skilled craft labor workers, linemen, electricians, it's every trade, craft skilled labor. It takes that, plus it takes just as much or more support services to keep those men and women building. And if this grid needs to at least at minimum double in 5 years, I don't think people can really grasp what that looks like and how big the workforce needs to grow in order to do that. And everyone gets so concerned about AI and AI taking jobs and this and that, blah, blah, blah. AI is coming for a lot of jobs. But Elon even said it on a recent episode, I think with Rogan. He said that jobs that move, where it's people moving physical mass, like people are picking things up and moving them or doing it with their hands. Like those are the last jobs to ever be taken by robots and AI. I don't know if people have seen robots. They've advanced a lot in a lot of ways, but they are not putting on a set of hooks and climbing a power pole and doing what we do up there. I've seen these things. They're not there yet. I'm not saying they won't get there, but for your lifetime, if you're just starting out, or if you're thinking about getting into a trade, trades are it, man. So that's like, I'm into raising awareness about that in a good way, in a positive way, because it is a great lifestyle. The trades are awesome. Line work is such a great career for people. That's what I'm into promoting. It's fed 2 generations of my family. I have an 19-year-old son now, turns 19 tomorrow. He just told me recently that he wants to be a lineman. I didn't push it, nothing. So that's going to be 3 generations in the trade now. And there's something special to that, but we need more of it, like drastically need more of it. So yeah, into raising awareness for it.
Speaking of AI, one of the things that comes up recently, and again, I'm so uneducated on this area, but if I'm describing this correctly, the servers that AI ultimately lives in are such an insane power draw, and the heat that they create, that it's at a detriment to, I guess, power supplies and even, the cooling of the planet, I would imagine. So what have you heard in your industry as far as the potentially, negative effects of these servers that are generating AI in the first place?
I haven't got too much experience on the negative effects of the servers, but I can speak to the demand again for craft skilled labor to build these things. Like these data centers are huge. Again, like data centers are so kept under the radar because of their proprietary, like nobody from Facebook or Google or whoever entity wants you to know what's happening inside of a data center. So they're not marketed. They're not like talked about. You don't get to really see them. You just hear these two words, data center. I suggest you go try to find one where you can actually see the size and scale of these things. And then just, go ask AI yourself to explain a data center to you and like the demands on the grid, the demands on the workforce. And you'll be blown away by the numbers and just sheer statistics that it gives you around what the requirements are for that. It's massive. And we literally don't have the people to do that work. So forget AI taking the jobs. Like the jobs are there. They're ready for the taking. Anybody can just step into them,
I don't know if I'm old fashioned, but if it's going to draw that much power and, it's great that you can get a photograph of yourself to dance to, Mexican gangbanger video. But there's a part of me that's like, well, when's too much though? Like, can't we just roll the clock back in some areas? Do we need AI to do everything now? Well, people say, I just punch it in and it's going to make a business and we're going to make $1 million a year. Well, A, do you need $1 million a year? And B, once everyone punches that thing, then are you still going to be making $1 million? I mean, I'm no economist, but I think the answer is no. So I don't know, like if this is becoming detrimental to, the environment and just the basic requirement for, comfort that we had, let's say when we were kids, which I thought was ample even then. I love the fact that television is clearer now and some other things, but, realistically, how much do we actually need to be very comfortable? And when is too much, so that's my only thing is now we're hearing just how hungry these data centers are for natural resources. Is there a place to actually draw a line in this whole thing?
I think that you bring up a good point as well. That got me thinking about something, just the atrophy of the human skills. Like if you're going to AI to just do everything now, how quickly are you losing your abilities to do things like be creative yourself? Like you're a writer. Their writing tools in these LMs they're getting incredible to where you can just give them a prompt and it can spit you out the next book. Right. But you didn't write that. Yes, you gave it the idea and there was some creativity around that, but you didn't go through the suffering of writing that book. Cause I'm sure I've never written a book, but from what I've heard from people, it's like suffering. It's hard to do. It's not easy. And you really got to put work into it. So if you're just getting, AI to do things like that, how quickly are you going to lose your skills? Not just lose your skills, but what does that trickle down effect, like you just said, what does that trickle down effect look like in the next generation of humans and the human generation after that? Do we lose the ability to write altogether in the next 2 generations? And how sad does that sound? So like, again, be cautious. There's a lot of people smarter than me, putting caution to using AI out there and really trying to educate people on it. But from my own experience, I try to use it as a tool, not as a crutch, but just as a tool, as help me organize or, prompt an idea, but then take actual physical time myself and mental time myself to write about that. I'm using the writing example again, or whatever your example is, but take time to do it yourself. That's the best advice I could give around that is like, just don't let your skills and your human creativity and your human skills atrophy because AI can do it better.
I'm totally paraphrasing, but I saw not a meme, but a post, and it said something to the effect of, I'm told that AI will give me more time for washing dishes and making beds or something like that. It said, I want AI to wash dishes and make my bed so I have more time to write and paint. Something to that effect. And they're absolutely right. Like, Someone literally on the show a while ago, Lee, told me, you know what, you can plug in exactly like you said, and AI can help you write the book and you can tweak some things. And I'm like, I can't think of anything worse than what you just said to me. And based on the emails we were talking before we hit record that I get from podcast companies that connect potential guests with podcasts, if that's the height of AI writing, then I have nothing to worry about whatsoever, because it is absolute dog shit. But as you said, using AI for the kind of admin side of it, yeah, and there's an AI infused element to the promo videos that I make. It searches like a 20-minute segment that I give it, and it pulls out 90-second one. Great, awesome. The editing that I use now is AI helped, fantastic. But from the creativity, when what I get from the books is like, dude, it was like I was right back there on the road, and you could tell it was written by someone who's there. Now, there's only a handful, really, of firefighter biographies out there, full stop, or, firefighter writing, put it that way. So I think this is it, is use AI for the stuff that, we don't need humans anymore. Humans don't even want to do it. And I think that robotics, where we had human beings awake throughout the night when they should have been in bed with their families, sticking labels on tin cans, absolutely, robots all day long. And then allow humans to then be more creative and do exactly like you said, the things that human beings need to do. And, fire and EMS, and law enforcement, that's where you need to have that compassion and empathy that you can't program into, a robot or AI. So, yeah, I think there's a very nuanced conversation, but I think sometimes we focus on the wrong thing. You don't want AI to be creative. That creativity and that learning, like you said, is important for the development of the human being. That's how we have innovation. But all of the things that are mundane that we all cringe doing, that's where AI's superpower is.
Don't buy back your time, to use a quote from Dan Martell, don't buy back your time just to spend it doing nothing. Like, that again is why it's so important to get right physically, get right mentally, all of these things, like what's your priorities, what's your intentions in life, what's your goals, what do you want to do? And if you're going to use AI to buy back your time, which you most certainly should, it's a great, powerful tool, but then go create the art, go, spend the morning drinking coffee with your wife and your kids, don't go use that time that you just bought back to go do something completely stupid or useless or, waste it. Just live it.
Absolutely. Well, one more kind of area, then I want to get to your transition. But as we sit here now, a massive winter storm is sweeping the US. Even down here in Florida, I think this weekend we're going to be in the 20s at night, maybe even the high teens, which for us is pretty crazy. But, we talked about hurricanes. That's a very Florida specific thing. And I think linemen really do get a lot of appreciation in the summer months here, because I've been there many times driving towards a storm on the way to a fire station, and it's just me and then a line of lineman trucks and, first responder vehicles heading into the storm. So we actually get to see it firsthand. Texas had that crazy ice storm a few years ago that, absolutely destroyed the state because they just weren't used to it. And loss of power obviously was a big part of that. So as we sit here now, where so much of the country is under ice conditions, talk to me about how, your community is helping again when everyone else is kind of hunkering down in their homes.
The heart of a lineman is truly like, it's a service-based profession. A lot of us, this is why it does tie in so nicely with veterans and military and first responders, is like, it's not the only reason that you join these professions is to serve, but it's like the servant heart component of it is definitely there. Like, you don't typically become a lineman, just for the money or just for, there are those outliers, but most of them have a service, like a servant heart. Because to be honest, like, I live in British Columbia, Canada. I've jumped on airplanes before, and within 24 hours, boots on ground in places like Connecticut after Hurricane Sandy, like you jump into the middle of a disaster. Yeah, the money is great. The work is fairly exciting, but I don't have to do that. they don't have to do that. They don't have to leave their homes. They don't have to leave their nice job at home, their family, to go jump into the middle of Florida ice storm or the middle of Texas ice storm. So they have a real servant heart to them. And that's what we want to do. We want to come in and we want to do our part, do our profession, our job, to the best of our abilities to help people regain some sort of normalcy after these natural disasters. That's a big part of it. And like I said, the money is really great. Like, I'm not going to sugarcoat that. You do make really good money, but the conditions suck. Like I said, you're living in man camps, eating, powdered eggs and not very good bacon, like every day for 20 days in a row. And I don't know, that stuff wears on you, man. Like the long days, long hours, you're away from your family, like all of those things stack up. And so like when it really comes down to it, then they just want to help people. They want to put that light switch back on for you. They want to turn that oxygen tank back on to that old lady that lives down at the end of that road, and really needs that back on, or that hospital, or turn that feeder on and watch 128,000 homes light up. That's what drives most of us is that there's a real thrill to that. But there's also just like that, hey, I want to do my part and do what I was trained to do to help people.
Talk to me just about how the weather impacts the wires themselves, because obviously if there's a massive snowstorm, I can see how ice would accumulate, but it seems like the wires go down a lot during these freeze events. So kind of what is the physics behind it, if you like?
Sure. I'd say a couple things. So when it gets cold, heaters go on, right? So there's like a load, or when it gets really hot in the reverse, everyone fires up their air conditioner. So like there's a load component to it. Load meaning like electrical demand load. And that does a lot of things because each of these components, like the wire, not to get too nerdy, but like the wire, have a certain resistance factor to them. Like it's just like, like the wires on the inside of a toaster. You flick a toaster on, you see they're all burning hot. The same thing's essentially happening. If you increase the load, it increases the temperature of things like the wire or just other components. And where you get temperature, you get risk factor in things malfunctioning. It really tests the outer capabilities of these electrical components. All right. So that you could identify real quick what was ready to blow up and what wasn't by, testing it to its limits. Right. So flicking on all your air conditioners or all your heaters really tests the limits. So that causes outages. Then you have things like, obviously, like wind is just going to blow stuff down. Ice is going to increase the weight load. So everything is designed, engineered to withstand some normal, outside the limits of what's normal for, a conductor and a pole, a structure to take load bearing wise. But if you start, even a little bit of ice around a wire, for a considerable distance is a huge amount of weight that you see wires droop down, and it can wreck stuff pretty easy, destroy, bring down wires, bring down poles, because everything's made of wood too, right? Wood, steel. But for the most part, all of these little, we call them distribution circuits. That's the lower voltage that's distributed around like cities and towns in your neighborhoods are wood pole construction and wood cross arms. Those beams you see at the top that hold the wires, that's all just wood. And a lot of that wood too has been in the ground or been up in the air for 60 years. And so, yeah, it's at its limits already. So you add things like the weight from ice or, just wind blowing things for an amount of time. It just brings stuff down, and it brings stuff down fast. It's almost that domino effect too. Like once one thing starts to fall, it pulls the next thing down. So you get that effect as well.
I didn't think about just the length of the wire and a little bit of ice. I mean, that makes a lot of sense too. And then, like you said, just the load. If something's, at near capacity and you just get this massive surge, I could see how that would factor in. As far as the wood, is it still the lack of conductivity that you keep using wood, or is it also just inexpensive still?
Uh, it's inexpensive. It's not lack of conductivity. Like they're actually wood poles can be very conductive because a lot of them get treated with a treatment like an anti-rot treatment, like copper naphthenate is like the green ones, or creosote is another treatment, wood pole treatment. So that stuff can make those poles very conductive. The insulators, so there'll be like porcelain insulators, or now they use a lot of poly or rubber insulation and fiberglass inside, that sort of thing, and glass even to insulate the conductor from the pole, which would be the ground potential. So they use a lot of that sort of stuff. So the reason they still use wood is price, and it's just ease of use as well. A lot of the times we have to manipulate the positioning of something like a crossarm or some sort of apparatus that gets bolted to that wood. And it's a lot easier to just take a nice Milwaukee drill and drill a couple holes in wood, put your bolts on and bolt that apparatus or equipment to the pole, versus drilling steel or fiberglass or some other material. Just ease of use for people is wood is just the most easy thing to use and resourceful. It grows, in forests. We can come by it very easily, or more easily, in America, North America. Some countries don't have that privilege, so they will use steel or fiberglass or other materials. But in North America, we use a lot of wood just because it is ease of use, cost, that sort of thing.
I'm so glad they asked that, because I didn't realize how conductive the treatments are. So from a first responder profession perspective, that's good for us to know, like, hey, just because it's wood, don't trust the fact that it may actually be carrying a current.
You see this a lot on storm calls as well. You'll see homeowners that you'll show up to their residence. There'll be a wire come across their driveway, and they've taken a 2x4 and they've notched the top of it and they've stuck it under the wire and they've propped up that wire across their driveway so they can get underneath of it. You're literally risking your life by doing that. If that 2x4 is fresh from the store and it's dry and it's not treated with anything, you've reduced your risks. It's a little less resistant, but there's still some abilities to track some current there. And to give a lot of people perspective, it takes 0.05 milliamps to stop the human heart. 0.05 milliamps. It takes 15 amps to run your toaster. So it doesn't take a lot of current to stop your heart. You're really just like you're playing roulette by doing things like that. And yes, for first responders, I know you guys get training on this, but just please, like, it's not worth trying to. It's not worth risking your life to try to deal with a down power line, a down conductor situation like that. And I know you guys get lots of training on that, and I'm preaching to the choir here, but just let a professional, like let us come in and just let you know that it's safe. Put a set of grounding equipment on that so that we've tested it, switched it off, tested it, and then grounded it to make it safe. And then, you guys can go do your thing. But yeah, don't risk your life to do that.
I think it was Anaheim. We had hot gloves and the stick. But again, not a huge amount of training. When I went to Orange County, we had a snake stick and no training on what to do. I worked on an engine that we responded to the airport. We never had any training on what would happen if we actually had to go into a plane. So that's a dangerous area when you have the equipment, but you don't have a good level of training to go with it.
A lot of times too is what people don't realize is like, okay, this conductor or wire is down and it's touching the ground. If that wire is still energized and putting energy into the ground, it disperses in a radius. And as that radius expands, the voltage drops across that radius, right? Across the distance. So for current, again, not to get too nerdy, but for current to flow, so for current to flow and stop your heart, you need a difference in potential, difference in voltage. You can create that with your legs by just having your legs 2 feet apart, 1 foot on the ground in front, 1 foot behind. You've created a difference in potential because there's a voltage drop across that. That could be enough to stop your heart. So what I'm getting at is like, you don't have to actually be touching the wire or right beside the wire. You could be up to 10 feet away from that and still have enough voltage drop across your legs, you know, from having your feet apart or having your hand touching something and your feet on the ground, that creates that circuit. If that, you know, that connects that series circuit and allows electricity to flow, or could allow electricity to flow. That's what's so dangerous about it too. And you can't see that stuff, but it's very much present. It's very much, it could be present and it could be there. Yeah.
You had mentioned before we hit record about veterans and first responders transitioning out of their professions and into line work. And I think this is a great place to put this in. Talk to me about, you know, what you're seeing as far as the same kind of attributes in uniform being applicable into your trade.
100%. I love this topic. I had firsthand experience with it. I'm not a veteran myself, but like I said, I was a lead instructor for a line school. I've been a lineman, power lineman since 2000. Second generation, like I said. It was a passion of mine. Very passionate about the career, about the job. I'm not on the tools anymore per se, like yourself, not executing the profession every day, but still very passionate about it because it's a very great career. So I was a lead instructor for this line school, and I helped get a lot of veterans into the line school and then on to a career in the line trade. And a lot of things I noticed was how incredible it was for transitioning vets, meaning the careers very much aligned. So when you come out of the military service and you come into civilian life, you don't always have a direction, you know, like you need a new purpose. You're trying to find your career, all this and that. And again, there's not enough awareness of the power line industry, the trades, but the power line industry as a potential option. So I started coming up with a list of, you know, reasons why they work so well together. So I'll just read a couple of the things off the list. So that mission first mindset, like I kind of touched on and talked about. Line work as a service. We restore power, protect the public, keep hospitals, water, communications running. That purpose under pressure is very familiar in both sides, both for line work and for ex-military. That comfort operating in risk, but not just risk, but risk with discipline. So like think training, right? The best operators aren't just thrill seekers. Yes, you know, a lot of us are thrill seekers, just like operators, but they're procedure driven. So vets and first responders already live in checklist protocols and risk management, right? That's the world they live in, very similar to us as well. Team-based execution. So crews function like units, roles are defined, communication is tight, and trust matters. You build that brotherhood, sisterhood. We live, breathe, work with these people every day in a tight, you know, sometimes life and death scenarios. Like really, when you're dealing with electricity, heights, traffic, heavy equipment, these are some of the things we deal with. When you're in those environments, you know, you build that brotherhood, sisterhood that you might not get from an accounting firm, you know. Shift work, call outs, nights, long storms, all those things we talked about. We live in a chain of command as well. Chain of command is very familiar with the military. Obviously, we live in that sort of an environment as well. Physical, mental toughness. We talked about that sort of thing already as well. And then after action learning and culture, debriefs are 100% part of what we do. We'll go through and execute a job during the day, end of the day, you know, do a debrief on what went right, what went wrong, what can we change, all of those sorts of things. So a lot of familiarities, and it's like a natural job progression for vets to go into line work.
We were talking as well before we hit record, and this is really interesting because I saw a piece, I think it was in the Wall Street Journal, and it was saying that Gen Z are leaning into the trades more now than ever. And when I took a step back, I was like, let me think about this, because they're not leaning into police, fire, and EMS at the moment. And if you think about the information that they have available, we just talked about ChatGPT, for example. And I tell you now, if you go to Google and Google, is it healthy to be a firefighter? Buckle up, because it's not going to be pretty. So the information is out there, full stop. But then also what you can do is go online and go, is it worth getting a degree? And AI will spit out, well, hey, it's going to probably cost you $60,000. You have a piece of paper that doesn't guarantee you any sort of job whatsoever. And so then you look at the trades, and the kids are like, well, what about lineman? What about, plumber, electrician? And they go, well, yeah, you just go to community college, go trade school. And then a year, 2, 3 years later, there'll be people just, waiting to gobble you up, basically, because it's in high demand. So it makes perfect sense to me that that's the case here. And I think it's exciting because the things that are turning people's heads in the fire service isn't the job, it's the working environment. And I'm sure you and I even spoke about this years ago. Our work weeks are insane, and it's only got worse. So now the amount of vacancies that remain unfilled means we're forcing whoever's in the uniform as it is to work those shifts. And no, you can't go home. You got to work yet another 24-hour shift. And these young people are hearing about that, these insane work weeks, the physical ill health, the mental ill health, and it's turning them away from our profession. You fix those elements like Pasco County just did 2 days ago, and they became 24/72 fully staffed fire department. They have a line out the door for people wanting to work for them. So, that leaning into the trades that I hear about, I think is exciting news for our first responder professions, as long as we unfuck the things that we have completely fucked up for the last 10, 15, 20 years and acknowledge that we have an issue and fix those problems. Talk to me about, this Gen Z generation and your population, and then let's expand, as we were talking about earlier, as far as the threat to the trades because of organizations within Canada itself.
I love hearing that. I've just been recently hearing that as well about Gen Z, and I love that for them. I love that for us, that they're actually like my son, prime example of that. This is a kid that, like myself, just, the school system, if you start way back then, the school system isn't for everyone. We all know that. Just like even like elementary school, high school, like it's just not set up for people that are, like myself, like a little bit ADD, a little bit dyslexic, just not really left to right learning, I came out of high school just like he did, wanting to do something different, kind of understanding that school, university, college wasn't really going to work for him. Like if it was, it's going to be a struggle, like it was for me. I luckily had my father that introduced me to line work because he was a lineman. So he said, hey, why don't you give this a try? You might actually like it. Up to that point, it wasn't something I thought about, but he just kind of said, I think you need to give this a try. As soon as I did it for myself, I was hooked. I was like, this is it. I get to be creative every day. I get to show up on new job sites every day. Every day is a new project. It's this, I get to build this brotherhood camaraderie with the people I work around. It's physical, it's outdoors. It's challenging. There's purpose to it. There's service to it. Like all of these things, if they resonate with you. And I think that that's what's resonating with Gen Z. Like, I'm so stoked to hear that. Like they don't want to go to college and university now, be guaranteed nothing and pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to do that. Like it doesn't, they're smarter. They're smarter. And if they're not smarter, they're at least going to these tools we built for them, like AI, and going, hey, tell me realistically about this thing. And it just gives them the facts. And the facts are, you can't ignore the facts. The facts are, it kind of sucks for a lot of people, unless you're going to go be the top professions like doctors, lawyers, whatever. It's you go into these, you pay hundreds of thousands of dollars and you're not guaranteed shit. Where I could choose line work, and I don't know a lineman that does not make under 120 or doesn't make under 120 grand a year. Like, period. That's like, those are the ones that aren't like hardly working even, just taking up shifts here and there, like part-time almost. You can scale that right up to 600,000-800,000, that's obviously coming with a lot of overtime, a lot of other special training, all that kind of stuff, but that exists. That's a fact. You can ask ChatGPT that question. So if you're going to go to chat and you're going to ask it, tell me all about the line profession, tell me what you're going to make, get detailed with it. Don't just take its first answer, because it'll give you this base rate. Like, you'll make 50 grand a year as a base rate. And that's taking things into consideration that real linemen don't even call line work, like some small communications line jobs that don't, it's not actual power linemen. So you need to really say, like, what does an electrical power lineman, make, or what's the range, if you're going to start asking those questions. But like, I love that for Gen Z, and I say, heck yeah, like, bring it on. We need more youth that are like go-getters and into doing this. And, another thing I noticed about Gen Z too is, like, they were getting a bad rap for a while, but most of the Gen Z that I know and interact with on a daily basis, they're doing things like quitting alcohol because it doesn't benefit them at all. And they're, getting together, drinking coffee and having a rave with a rave mixed with coffee party, like things like that. Like, love that. They're a little more health conscious because there's podcasts and there's AI to teach them about, how to look after themselves, how to build training programs. They're at the gym now. Like, I think it's awesome. They're a great fit for the trade, and I welcome it. Also, another thing that my generation couldn't get away with, challenging veteran linemen. So linemen are tradesmen that have been in the trade for a while. They'll tell you, go do this, kid. And you'll be like, that doesn't really seem right. But you had no way to challenge them, because they're the ones that have done this for years and they're telling you what to do. So just go do it. Even though it didn't seem safe, or it didn't seem like there seemed like there was a better way to do it. But now Gen Z has these tools available to go, no, like, you're telling me a bunch of bullshit. This is not the most efficient way to do it. And I'd like to challenge that, or I'd like to think about it differently. I don't know. You got to work on your approach there if you're Gen Z, and the other way on how you approach those convos, but at least they're challenging them now. And they're going, no, this doesn't seem safe. This doesn't seem right, which I think is awesome.
I think the best thing that I'm hearing, which I can relate to, because this is me too, which is probably why I ruffled a lot of feathers, when I it was in certain departments, but is asking the question, why? And perfect example, I just had one of the former training chiefs of Chicago Fire on the show. And he was saying, we have this one technique where, as you're progressing into a fire, you're opening windows. And it was, supposedly to vent and lift the smoke and all this stuff. And he goes, do you know why it actually is? And I'm like, well, I'm not the fire guru, never put myself that way. Love fighting fire, but I was perpetually a student. So I'm like, no, but I'm excited to hear the real reason. And he said, before we even had SCBAs, air tanks, the old salts would progress up a hallway. The next window, they'd stick their head out, take a couple of breaths, put it back in again, and then off they would go. Nothing to do with smoke conditions or anything else. It was actually just to take a breath. So I think this is what's exciting now, whether it's AI, whether it's just simply. But I love the 3 whys. You talked about Tim Ferriss. He had a guy, I think it was an Argentinian businessman, and he talked about the 3 whys that his dad had told him. And so you're saying, well, why do we go down the hallway? It's because of this. Well, why? And then boom, if you fall on the first why, then all of a sudden, we need to look at this a little closer. And so many things, well, that's the way we've always done it. Let's take the firefighter work week. well, why do we work 56 hours a week when everyone else works 40? The answer is literally because we've always done it. And it comes from when we used to just fight fire 100 years ago. You know what I mean? And you'd get a great night's sleep. And once in a blue moon, you'd actually go to a fire. But why do we do it today? By the second why, you're already done. You're toast because there's no sense behind it whatsoever. So I love that. And I think that's what this younger generation are doing. And they're like, well, why should we drink alcohol if it's a poison and it makes, brings your bad side out and blah, 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 and you can't drive with it? Why don't we just, do something else instead? So, and they're romanticizing about our childhood too, and taking a lot of the good things from that, which I love. And even I just saw recently, there's kind of a craze where they're trying to remove filler words because you've got the likes and the low keys and all this stuff. And I think they're realizing like, hey, we're starting to sound pretty dumb now. Maybe we should work on our vocabulary and our grammar and our speech and be able to really articulate what we're trying to say. And because they grew up in this emoji, acronym world. So poor kids, no wonder. So I'm loving this because they're actually going back to the 80s and 90s and going, all right, how did you guys do it? My son has a record player. Perfect example. You know what I mean? So sorry, I've been kind of going off on a tangent, but to your point, I agree. There's a demonizing of, kids today, air quotes, but I think we need to take a step back and really look at that generation because they're doing a lot of things right and they're learning from our mistakes.
I definitely run a highlighter over that communication aspect that you just talked about. I love hearing that they're diving into communication. I see it on social too. I see a lot of people talking about becoming better communicators, educating on becoming better communicators. Warren Buffett's got a great quote that I'm probably paraphrasing, but he's saying basically, if you want to increase your wages in any job that you go do, just learn how to be a better communicator. There's 100% truth to that. That's something that I'd say. And I like I said, again, run a highlighter over it for Gen Z is learn how to become a better communicator. I've been dealing with that a lot with my own sons. They just, they won't even double tap your text message just to let you know that, they received it and they heard it or they saw it or they at least read it because the read receipt's off like 3 days later, did you even get the text? Oh yeah, Dad, sorry, I got it. So I've had a lot of conversations about them with them about just becoming a better communicator. Over communicate. Especially if you're dealing with people like in the workplace, they're both going through, that transition into career world and you're going through job interviews or talking to people in the workforce setting. And one of my kids will, he'll send me screenshots of what he's going to send out in a text message and I'll just give it a little bit of a review, which I think is awesome now. Like he's checking in to see, hey, would this be a good text to send? And I'm like, well, you could change this, you could change that, just offer advice on communicating. So like, I love that they are doing that as well. And yeah, just 100% want to run a highlighter over that, become a better communicator and your whole life gets easier. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think this is the exciting thing. This generation, as you said, they value their physical health, they value their mental health, they value their relationships, time at home. And so for the fire service, if we, which we're seeing now in Florida, invest in our people, create healthy work weeks, fill all the vacancies because now people want to work for you, you are then going to, the rising tide lifts all ships. As a profession, we're going to go back to the high demand that you need in your trade, in my trade. There's a certain percentage of the population that can really do this job well, and we have to attract them, and we have, 1,000 people apply, then you take, the top 50, and that's how it should be. It's no different than a special forces, a special operations group, really, because we truly are dealing with life and death. But where we are now in police and fire is literally going into high schools and begging children to come do this thing and we'll train you and everything and we'll give you a hiring bonus. And that is not how you do it. And it doesn't create a love of the job either. There's zero skin in the game by that point. So by fixing the things that we have screwed up, my population, my generation, because now at 51, we're talking about the chiefs and the union presidents and all these other people. it's on us. This is our fault now. Our forefathers may have created this, but we're the ones that have to fix it. But we can turn it around, and this Gen Z, the right group of this Gen Z, are going to be even better than we ever were, because they're going in with the mental health, with the physical health, with the emotional health that we didn't have. We went in blindly post 9/11, just sign me up. I want to go do that thing because I want to serve. Now, these people understand, what that takes, and they're preparing for it.
Young people used to, well, they ask me all the time. They reach out on social or whatever, or just ask in person, what can I do that would help set me apart, to choose me in a career like this? And I used to give them advice like, do what you can, get first aid training, some chainsaw, some rigging training, learn some basic electrical theory, like all these things that were like, learn what you can outside of, getting into the career. So you're kind of a little bit prepped for it. I've been telling them a lot lately all of that's good, but learn communication skills, learn leadership skills. Those sorts of things will set you immediately apart from the pack. And so I'm glad you highlighted that, because yes, communication, leadership is another one of those that if the sooner you can learn about leadership in high school or sooner, like learn how to lead in sports, learn how to lead in your class, like take those opportunities to practice things you learn about leadership as you're younger. By the time you're ready to hit the workforce, we are in such need of quality leadership. And I'm not just talking about managing and leaders is two different things. I'm talking about leaders. Like you could throw a room full of everybody that is exactly the same job title and profession, and somebody ends up coming out of that room a leader of that room. Like that's what I'm talking about. Actual leadership skills, so important to learn. So I've actually been building programs to help identify what kind of cohort or what cohorts of people would work well in the trades and in a trade like Powerline work, for example. So the same could be applied to, EMS, firefighters, first responders, that sort of thing. What's the cohort of person look like? What's that avatar look like that would be good for this profession? And where do they exist in groups? And then how can I get into those groups and help mentor them with things like leadership skills, communication skills? Like forget even telling them about line work, just prep them to be that sort of person that would be good for that job later, whether they realize it or not. Just you doing that and that association with, hey, a lineman is taking the time to train this kid or teach this kid about, leadership skills, communication skills, these sorts of like soft skills. It's just that understanding, that association with that, when they come out, they're naturally more than likely going to go the direction of fire service, line work, whatever that association is. So we've been doing a lot of that lately. We've been identifying, like we talked about military, why they're so good. Another community that is really good for trades is that ranch rodeo community. So we do work with high school rodeo students. We have a high school rodeo team, and we'll bring them to like a little mini retreat where we talk a little bit about the trades, but it's very surface level about the trades, answer questions they have about the trades, introduce and make awareness of it. But we impart into them leadership skills, communication skills, all of these sorts of things. We really try to drive that into them so that when they're ready to hit the career train, they think about us if they're looking for a career and they're aware that the trades exist. That's kind of a way that we're trying to like make it better.
Well, this is the conversation we have in the fire service too, and I always illustrate the local mentorship program they have here. My friend Chris Hickman started, because not only do you address a diversity issue, which is a real thing, but how people have responded to it in the past is usually very poorly, which is, well, go get me 20 gay people, go get me 12 black people, whatever it is. And they just dragnet a group and they're like, all right, congratulations, you're a firefighter, which, is not well received by the people that have, fought to earn a spot. Where a mentorship program is so effective is you absolutely reach into underserved communities and you say, look, we do training 3 times a week. You just need to show up. We're close to where you live. We'll give you the training. We'll give you the equipment. There are scholarships to the fire academy. There are fire departments looking to hire on the back end. Now you challenge young people of underserved areas to reach that bar. You give them all the tools. And then you have three groups. You have a group that goes, you know what, thank you, but I just realized I don't want to be a firefighter now. I didn't realize it was hard and hot and all that stuff. Okay, awesome. You learned something totally valuable. You had the middle group that's like, okay, you're interested, but you're not there yet. You have work to do. Brilliant. Okay, there's your homework. And then you have the third group, which were the rock stars in that community that are going to go on and be phenomenal firefighters, linemen, whatever it is. So I love that model because you're actually addressing the fact that, yes, you know, there are areas of the community that are underserved that are not reflected in the fire department, but then you're going in and not just scooping them all up. You're training them and challenging them to hit that bar. So when they do put that uniform on, they're received as another brother or sister. So I think mentorship is absolutely one of the biggest tools we have in the trades to get back to where we need to be.
And that's what the trades is all about. Like it's craft, skill, labor. It's hate to use master apprentice, the word master, but like that's what it was, you know, in past times. There was the master craftsman and the apprentice, and it was a mentor. It's a mentorship. It's on the job training. For the most part, there's school, sure, to learn, you know, technical aspects of electricity or, you know, fire service or EMS or whatever. But a lot of it's on the job. Like there's nothing like coming up on an accident scene and having to problem solve and deal with real time, real world life and death scenario, you know, for you guys. For us, there's nothing like, you know, jumping into the middle of a hurricane that just struck yesterday and everything is down, and there's so many dangers involved with that, like weights and forces, like potential energy. We'll just call it potential energy that could be released in any sort of way that could be detrimental to a person, whether it's electrical energy, physical energy, you know, kinetic, whatever. It's pretty easy to move something and end up losing a limb or life because of it, right? This forces you, you know. Anyway, it's great. It's great. Mentorship is where it's supposed to be. It's a craft, you know, whether it's EMS, whether it's line work or a trade, it's a craft. We're meant to mentor. That's our job. So any craftsman that said, you know, I'm not teaching. I don't have to teach apprentices. That's not my job. You hear that a lot too. That's another one of those old sayings. Like, it's not my job to teach apprentices. It is most certainly your job.
Well, who taught you?
It is more yeah, exactly. Who taught you? It's more your job than the actual job you're doing at that point.
100%. And this is what's scary about the fire service at the moment. I know a lot of departments, 50% have 5 years on or less. So, you know, because I always looked at that. I stayed at firefighter rank for 14 years, and I love that kind of journeyman experience that you're talking about. We're already a Swiss Army knife before you talk about promotion. And I personally didn't have, as I got deeper into my career, any real desire to be an engineer or a lieutenant as far as the ranks, because I was still learning how to be a good firefighter paramedic. But, but when you lose that experience, then, you know, where are the mentors now? And you hear Jocko with the origin story of Origin, the clothing company, them trying to find someone who knew how to use a loom in the US, you know. So you had mentioned before we hit record about some of the challenges of industry and therefore the trades in Canada. What are you seeing as far as the challenges, and how do we reinvigorate, you know, whether it's manufacture or the other industries in our own countries again?
It's going to that. We're atrophying, meaning if you're not building things, you're going to lose the people who do build the things, and then you're going to lose that transfer of knowledge and skill sets as well. Like it's going to atrophy, which is scary because Canada honestly produces, like I can speak directly for the line trade. Canada has produced amazing power line workers. We have a wide range of just geological terrain that really tests our skills. and makes us great linemen. So you have that kind of like playground. But if you're not building anything on this terrain, which we haven't really built stuff, we haven't invested in infrastructure for years now. And that's just not power line infrastructure. That's, pipelines, that's logging, that's mining, that's whatever craft skill labor requires. We just haven't done it for a long time. So a lot of people that I grew up with in the trade have, like me, left for the United States, left for other places in the world. There's Powerline projects going on in Australia right now, in Europe, South America, in United States, massive projects, and you're instantly received down there. It's like, yeah, we need your help. So let's go. Like, we've got stuff for you to do. And so we're losing that up here. So when you lose that too, like, you usually lose the best ones, so to say, first, because they can get those visas across. They can get those work visas because they're highly trained, highly skilled, highly needed and required, right? So it's a little easier to get those work visas and go to work. So you lose the top level of your skill set right off the top. There you go. They're gone. And then that trickle down effect of that into passing down the skills and knowledge to the next generation, we're starting to see that. And it's very unfortunate. It makes more work for the people who do care here that are still in those trades. It makes a lot more work and pressure on them to train that next generation, because they're dealing with a smaller sandbox to play in, and, less skilled, craftsmen to help train those people. So I don't know. It's tough. It's really tough. And then even getting into the trades themselves. So I'll take my son, for example, again. I've been in the industry for 26 years. My family's been in the industry for 50 years. With all of my connections in Canada, I still could not get him a job in Canada doing that profession. But one text message, and I've got him into that line school in Texas. He'll come out of that with an immediate job and a great career and good pay. But that's in another country, which is fine. But it's unfortunate because not everybody here has that opportunity. But yeah, opportunity's pretty slim as well.
It reminds me of a conversation with Rasul Razek, which was a pseudonym, but he was a former mujahideen. He fought alongside, our allies in Afghanistan, and did a really powerful conversation on post-withdrawal, what the Afghan people were going through, starvation and the winters and, the ripple effects of, almost 20 years of war. And he was talking about, it's great that a lot of the Afghan people were brought to the US and, often for their own safety. He said, but you've got to understand that's all our best people. Not all, but like you said, a lot of skilled people could come over here and become a physician or an engineer or, whatever these roles were. And I've heard someone say the converse as well, that, they were all about, immigration. But he's like, think about it. For every someone who truly comes from another country that was poached for the profession that they do and brought here, that's one American of, whatever color, creed, ethnicity, religion, but a born and bred American could have filled that role as a doctor or as it whatever. And you've also taken a great physician from, let's say, India to bring them here. So again, rising tide lifts all ships. When you're investing in each other's, infrastructure and, investing in your own people, everyone elevates. But you start pilfering and pinching people from other countries, you're doing a disservice to that country and, in theory, your own as well. Because the question then, is, well, you're telling me there aren't enough young people in America to become physicians, but what's a big barrier? My wife just went through it. You literally have $500,000 worth of debt if you become a doctor in America. But there are countries all over the world that actually support their young students, and India, I believe, is one of them, where they take care of them through the whole thing. But then, how sad is that they've educated a young doctor, and then a few years later, that doctor then comes to another country after the people of India invested in them. So it's a really interesting conversation that really kind of everyone loses when we do this. And if we actually just create these opportunities for our own people in each of these countries, everyone wins. And it's cheaper because you're not having to ship all these products all over the world then.
It's a topic that definitely needs to be explored more. And I wouldn't say I'm an expert on it, but like an opinion I do have on it is we could be better at, so say like allowing people to, because this is one of the things that is really nice about Powerline work is it's a very transient trade. It's not typically like plumbing or something where you can stay very local in your own community and you just do it there. You can do that with line work, but you can also be a person who chases major projects and goes out and works on major projects, which are all in different areas, right? You have this ability to be transient. And what that does is it teaches you skill sets that you wouldn't necessarily get in your small little community. It's experience doing, projects you wouldn't get to do in your community, learning from people that you wouldn't get to learn from. But it's like what happens after. So it's this conversation around, okay, like that should be a part of training. But we get them back, and we have work for them to come back to and a life for them to come back to. If there's no life or no work for them to come back to, they're not going to come back. And that's the combo that we really got to start having more of. Like once you lose them, you tend to just lose them now. I know lots of my friends that have completely moved to the United States, not because they totally wanted to. Yeah, they wanted to, but given that choice to stay home, they probably would have stayed home. They just didn't have that ability, nothing to come back to, no life, like didn't agree with a lot of things to come back, but they would choose that if they had that choice. So like, I don't know, more convo around that because there's awesome components to getting out of your comfort zone, and gaining that experience in another country with new people, new cultures, new ways of doing things, but then like bringing that back and teaching the people that, you can teach from your own place.
Absolutely. Love that. One more area before we go to some closing questions. You, like myself, have transitioned out of actual kind of hands-on lineman work and now are more in, this space, the promotion, the marketing, that kind of area. What made you pull the trigger to step out? And let's talk about what you're doing these days.
So my original exit from the tools, we'll call it, from being on the tools, was like a family scenario. I had to get my son in a different school. He grew up with severe dyslexia. So I had to get him out of regular public school and into a school that meant I had to move. And when I moved, I kind of faced this choice whether I stay more at home with him or still chase those transient jobs. So I decided to take an office job, a management job in the same industry, but more management. That was my original transition out of it. I really, I don't like, I'm a tradesman through and through. All of those other reasons we already talked about were the reasons like I loved line work. So being in management wasn't my gig. I just didn't like being in an office every day. Didn't like sitting under fluorescent lights. Didn't like the politics. I still don't. I really like shy away from that. So that's what motivated me to start the podcast and start marketing. And that actually COVID was an opportunity to step away from management. So I was in that management kind of executive role for like 5 years, and COVID was like an opportunity for me to step back from that and go, okay, let's like spend some time with the family. Let's pour into the podcast. Let's do some marketing. Let's do something else. And that's when I ended up taking an instructor job, which got me, partially in a classroom, like inside, but then I also got to go teach climbing class outside and spend time on the tools again, spend time in my own belt and hooks and climb poles again and towers again, and train and impart and be that mentor. Right. And I fell in love with that. I loved that. I kept running the podcast on the side on my own time during that whole time. And it ended up getting recognized by a large Powerline contracting company. And they asked if I just come do that full time for them. So like the marketing and promotion has always kind of been there of it. It was my connection back to the trade, my brothers and sisters, that job and career I fell in love with. So it was just this kind of like natural progression towards it. I miss it sometimes, but sometimes I'm like, I could give or take it now. I've spent enough time away from it now that I'm kind of like, I don't necessarily would ever know if I'd want to jump back into on the tools again. So I'm like, I'm in a weird place right now. And I was actually curious, like how you're dealing with that as well from the fire perspective, and used to, because honestly, nothing else in my life was quite like that. Like I'm on my own. I do a lot of work from my own home office like I am right now, but then I also get out on the road. I get half and half, 50-50. I get out in the field with guys still, but I'm not doing the actual work, but I get out there to interview them and mingle with them and talk to them. And then I'm back in my office, and I spend some time in a corporate office as well. But none of that has the experiences, or have I gained the experiences in that I did on the tools, in the trade, building camaraderie, brotherhood, like enjoying the struggle of everyday line work and all of those other things we talked about. So I don't know. It's a weird time for me right now. Like I'm drifting further and further from it. But still it's almost like the highlight of my career that I still talk about was like back when, I've become that person now. That's like, oh, back when I used to do that. And I don't know. I don't want to be that person either. Right. So I don't know.
What I found when I've analyzed my transition is the mission hasn't changed. Before, and I was just talking to my mum to this, I believe that when I was a young boy, I was very kind. I went through a turbulent time, kind of teens-ish, where I was probably more selfish and dealing with some family issues and stuff. And then I found my way back again. And then the mission again was to be kind. Even during the turbulent times, I was a lifeguard. Like I was always doing something that was trying to make people's lives better, keep them safe, etc. And so now when I look back at the 14 years, and my career was bizarre. Like I didn't expect to leave the fire service, but the universe, God literally was like, hey, you've done all you can do from the inside. You like to kick indoors. So we're going to put you outside the fire service and continue this. And what I realized is it was actually a Delta guy initially, I think, that told me this, but the force multiplier, I love that term. Like at 14 years in, you can maybe, you can promote, you can put bugles on your collar, or you can go teach at a fire academy. But what I saw is, or you can actually try and make changes that affect the entire fire service. And then ultimately every single person, every single one of those first responders now responds to in their whole career. So once I kind of left and tried volunteering for a second, I realized that the identity hadn't changed at all. It was different costumes. I wore, a lifeguard costume. I wore a stuntman costume. I wore, a firefighter and a paramedic costume. But the mission was the same. It's James Gearing just putting clothes and taking them off, So that's how I've come to terms with it. And watching, for example, Pasco County 2 days ago go to the 24/72, this healthy work week, fully staffed. And my friend Dixon, who's their union president, saying that he has been watching his brothers and sisters posting, this will be the last shift I ever work on a 24/48. And this is, they were understaffed before. So they were getting forced into mandatory just a couple of years ago, 2-3 years ago. And now they're on a 4 fully staffed shift system where they go for 24 hours. And then they have a full 72 hours, and they will not get a phone call saying you have to stay. Tell your kids you can't go home. Life changing, And was that just me? Absolutely not. But I know, and he said this, that I was at least part of that, And there's other departments that have reached out that I know I've helped, definitely one-on-one. So we're talking thousands of firefighters who are going to go on and save change hundreds of thousands of lives. That's enough for me. I don't need to be front and center. I don't need to be in the bunker gear, getting off the rig, looking all heroic. It's time for someone else to do that now, but I think that's what keeps me going. And then writing the books and now working on this TV show where now I've got my heart set on changing millions of lives. Sounds grandiose, but imagine if you had the popularity of Tiger King with a show that actually helped people heal.
Made a difference.
Imagine the impact. Yeah. So it's just now it's like, how can you go bigger and not more grandiose, but take, you're 20 years old. How can you use that experience? Now you're 30, now you're 40, now you're 50 years old with all these things that you've done. now how can you use that wisdom in a way that helps so many people? And ultimately, most people will never know you had anything to do with it, which I think is fucking awesome, because
Yeah.
it's not for the glory. It's just to make the world better,
Yeah.
So that for me is really how I come to terms with it. Is come hell or high water. We were talking, just before we hit record about, the 2025 and the impact on a lot of companies and how financial struggles. Whether I have 3 sponsors or 0 sponsors, 3 episodes go out a week regardless. That the mission hasn't changed. Hopefully, I get sponsors where I can pay my mortgage. That's kind of important, but it doesn't change the fact that come hell or high water, 3 episodes are going to go out every week, because I know that someone out there would have need to have heard that very conversation. So long kind of answer to your question, but I think that's it. It's just understanding what you're doing now is so important, but it's just less front facing, admiration that we got when we were actually doing the job, whether you were going towards a storm or I was going towards a fire. Yeah. I mean, that you can never change that feeling, but it's also kind of been there, done that. 14 years later, you're not learning as much per every call. It takes an absolute barn burner to even get your heart rate up 14 years later, so that's a good time to be like, all right, how can I use all of this that I've got now and help everyone that's in there? And then again, create this amazing opportunity so the next generation of firefighters are going into something that's super healthy for their physical health, for their mental health. And, we don't have comments that I've had, when I walk through the front door of, oh, you wait 10 years, you'll have, your 3rd marriage and an alcohol problem. I want that to go away completely. I want that to have been ancient history where they say, did you hear what they used to say back in the day? But now firefighting is still dangerous, still courageous, but the environment that they work in sets them up for a high level of performance, not a likelihood of cancer or suicide.
Yeah. I love the way you framed that. Yeah, 100%. I feel like that's definitely, I resonate with that as well. It's like the mission has not changed. I guess it's just like the transformation of myself going through this in real time is what's just, I don't know. It's a human experience. Everybody does it. That's why, like, somebody listening to this right now is somewhere in this transition period. At what point it's just a matter of time before you're in a point like myself or you, where you've been in something for a period of time and you now exit that and you got to figure out something else to do. So I love the way you framed that. It's just a costume. It really is just it's just a costume I wore. But yeah, the mission hasn't changed. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think you look back with pride. I mean, it's like, raising your kids. One day, I mean, yours is about to turn 19. Mine is not far behind that, and I know that a year and a half from now that, my son will be going to college, touch wood, and, be off on his own medical journey. And now we're going to have an empty home. And again, we can't relive that. That's the point, so you're like, okay, well, what can we do now? Well, I'm going to watch him create his own family and his career, and I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. But it's okay to be nostalgic. It is, but you already lived that. You had the best years. As you said, the early years were the most exciting years. So I think, being proud of that and then turning the page and be like, all right, what exciting shit can I start now? So that when I'm 60, I look back and go, man, 52 was a hell of a year, wasn't it?
Yeah. And I had one experience in last October. I got to take him we do this thing in line work. We call it the International Lineman Rodeo, but it's just a competition for linemen to get together. Thousands of linemen get together to compete in the name of safety and competition in our sport, like a fireman's sport, day. So we competed this time. So I took him to the largest one in the world. It's in Kansas City. And I got to immerse him in this career that he was wanting to get into now. But it was super special because it's also like what I've spent the last 26 years of my life in, and all of the connections. Like, it was so neat for him to experience that with me and see, again, not gloating, but see some of the impact his father's had in the line community. Was a bit of a celebrity there in that way, but not gloating, because everyone that came up to say something was something along the lines of like, thank you for doing what you do. I would never have known about this career. I was miserable at my old job. I was doing this, and now I'm doing this, and I love it. And I'm thriving, and I have this, like a few of them with baby strollers and their wives, and we just want to thank you. And like my son's standing there, and he got to hear this again and again and again and again. I could just, I don't know, for him to be able to see that, because it made this connection, I think, with him, that this connection to what dad did for the last 26 years, some of those times, some of those birthdays I had to miss because I was on a storm call or called out or whatever. Like that was the reason. And I don't know, it's like it clicked for him, because really your kids don't care about what you do until they care, one day it clicks with them. But when they're kids, they don't really, I don't know, dad builds power lines. I don't even know what that is, but it clicked for him there. And that was super special.
I just did a workout that I do every year. It's a fundraising one in memory of the 343 we lost in 9/11. And it's imagine like a kind of CrossFit fused with firefighter movements. It's really, really good. I've done it for 11 years now, I think. But it's kind of like you're saying, it wasn't even so much thank you, even though there were some of those. It was just, I was reconnected with so many firefighters that I've known for years and years and years. And these are the men and women that are at these events. This is the true brotherhood and sisterhood. And I'd been out the fire service, when I went this last time, for 7 years. I hadn't worked for that department for 12 years. And between the actual events, I literally spent the whole time just bumping into people. And it wasn't even so much the podcast, even though that was part of it. It was just when you've worked with these people, there is this bond, and it doesn't end just because you've gone, for a few years. So I think seeing that too, seeing what the true camaraderie looks like when you're amongst the real men and women of the fire service, who are there when it counts. They're there, the shared suffering yet again to show the firefighters of New York that we haven't forgotten, and to fundraise for local charities. Like that's something special. My son got to witness that, a little while ago too. So yeah, I mean, it is. And then you feel locked in again. You're like, okay, this is why I'm doing this. This is a beautiful reminder of, it's not just staring at a screen and talking to a microphone, because I don't know if you have the same, it kind of feels a little hermit-esque, because we're not in the station every day, but then you get to kind of drop in and reconnect with some of these places. And, it does, show the fruits of your labor, as it were.
Yeah, agreed. I love it. It was a great experience.
All right. Well, go into some closing questions then. The first one I love to ask, is there a book or are there books that you love to recommend? It can be related to our discussion today or completely unrelated.
A book that I've been recommending a lot lately is Winning by Tim Grover. I got to see Tim in person a couple of months ago at an event, give a talk, and I'm going to see him again live next month. I absolutely love Tim. Tim's, if anyone doesn't know, Tim is Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan's, most famously known as Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan's personal trainer. He was on The Last Dance. Just Winning is a phenomenal book. It's one of those ones that'll just kick you right in the butt and really start making you question like what you're up to and what you're doing and how bad you want things. Winning. Brilliant.
What about television, film, documentary?
Television, film, documentary. I haven't really been into TV lately. I consume a lot of podcasts, and I won't point to one podcast because I listen to so many, but honestly, it's something. Everybody has their podcast. Just get out of the normal train of ones you listen to and try one that you haven't maybe inject one a week. If you're one of those avid podcast listeners, one a week that you haven't really listened to lately, but that's one thing I've been challenging myself with.
Brilliant. So the next question, is there a person that you recommend to come on this podcast as a guest to speak to the first responders, military, and associated professions of the world?
Yeah, I've got one for you, and I could ask him if he'd be willing to do it. He came on my podcast. His name is Shane Kimbrough, and he's an Army veteran. He was a helicopter commander, and he was an astronaut commander, space station commander, spent 365 days on the space station, numerous over 24 hours of spacewalking time. Phenomenal guy. I think he would be good for your community. He's a really interesting guy. So that'd be a good one. And then there's another one that I've met recently, Ted Carter. So former vice admiral and now president of Ohio State University, Ted Carter. He's a good guy. Promotes the trades, promotes veterans, obviously, and has a lot of leadership knowledge to draw from. So he'd be great for the show as well.
Brilliant. Have you ever thought about trying to get on Mike Rowe's show?
Yeah, I would love to. I have not reached out, but yes, have you had Mike Rowe on yours?
No, I need to. I've wanted to. I think I have written to him before, but now he's actually got a podcast. It's probably time that I do again. And I don't, mate, it's funny. Hardly any of these people have firefighters on their show either. Joe Rogan has never had a career firefighter on his show in almost 3,000 episodes. So that's how underrepresented our community is. But
he's never had a lineman
Mike would
on
be a
the
good
show either.
Yeah.
He's never had a lineman on a show either. And it's just one of those industries like not many people are aware of. And I think he'd really enjoy having a convo with a lineman and exposing awareness of the community and what they do, because I think it's massively valuable. He's had a couple people on that have referenced doing line work before in the past or having it in the family, like some famous people. But, and I know Cam Haynes has a really good hunting buddy that's a lineman. And I think Cam's had him on his show, but we could just definitely use some more.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I'm hoping to when the show comes out, get on some of these bigger platforms and start telling our story. Because, it's not only about what we do, it's how we see the world, which is what, kind of my latest book is trying to do, is to show society through a firefighter's eyes too, not make the firefighter the kind of hero of the story, as it were, quite the opposite. But, a politician can get up there and say that crime is down or, whatever shit they're spouting at that moment. But ask a cop, ask a paramedic, ask a firefighter, how is their community? Ask the people in, Vancouver or Toronto about the opioid crisis, or San Francisco about the homelessness. They'll tell you how it actually is, because they're the last line of defense for these poor people when they're at death's door. So I think it would be, an invaluable perspective. And I hope the show will then kind of leverage a lot of people to be able to get out there and tell their story too.
There's also the Devin Levesque I recommended to you. I don't know him personally, but I followed him for a while. And I think he'd be great for your community, because you just even mentioned that word community and building community. And I think this whole idea of building community has been engulfed by the online idea of building a community and a digital presence and a digital community through followers or subscribers. And that's definitely a great aspect, but like what happens when you try to take that in real life? And I think we need more in real life community. And he does it amazing, building both digital, online, and in real life communities, and what he's doing with his in real life communities, which is awesome. Another one is Eric Hinman. I've had him on my show in the past, from Austin, Texas. He's phenomenal at building community. He's in that hybrid athlete, high rocks, CrossFit, that sort of community, health and wellness community. But he does such a good job at actually building community through in real life stuff as well as the digital. So I don't know, their perspectives on both the digital and in real life community aspect would be cool.
Was it Devin that you told me about that had the farms?
Yeah.
He did sound very interesting. Yeah. Brilliant. All right. Well, the last question before we make sure everyone knows where to find you, what do you do to decompress?
I honestly, decompression for me is time alone. I'm like an introverted extrovert, so I can turn it on when I need to, but I really need that recharge my social battery by spending time alone. And that's just doing things as simple as walking, hiking, things like that. Writing. I'm just a normal dude. I don't take things usually to the extreme, especially you see a lot of that again on social media, where everybody thinks you got to run 15 marathons a year in order to have time to yourself. But I just go for a walk. listen to a podcast, listen to an audiobook, or go with no device. Write a lot in my journal, whatever my thoughts are, just get it out of my head onto paper. I love being creative. Even just thinking about creative things and not even necessarily making them, but just going through the process of thinking them, writing them out, ideas, things like that. I love that. That's like my decompression. Yeah.
There has been a kind of hero worshipping of ultra running. And it's interesting because, I mean, I'm the first one to be out there talking about how important it is that we move. But I always look at what did we do back in the day as human beings, the way that we, found our food, the way we prepared our food, the way we moved, etc., the way we, it takes a village, we took care of each other's kids and took care of the elderly. But if you look at these ultra endurance events, you're getting away from wellness now and you're doing a very myopic performance thing, same as the strongman events at the highest level. Really it's at the detriment of your well-being. So I think people need to understand that. If you want to be an ultra runner, or Ironman triathlete, amazing, more power to you, so much respect. But understand that that's not wellness. Wellness, you can be active, you can do sports you love and train hard, 3-4 times a week. But when you go beyond that, you're actually going away from wellness and longevity now. And if you're, for example, a firefighter who's not sleeping every third day, or maybe, every second day because you're getting forced to, work overtimes, is running 50 miles the best thing, or are you accelerating maybe potential injury in that particular choice of sport? So I think it's just, it's an important part of the conversation, like the GLP-1. If you just fell in love with running and endurance sports, then that's exactly what you should be doing. But this kind of hero worship of, running, like why am I blanking on his name? Who's the Navy SEAL that kind of started it all?
Oh, Goggins.
Goggins, yeah. I mean, worshiping Dave. David's on his own journey. That's David Goggins' journey. But you can still be a man and go to the gym for an hour, 3 or 4 times a week. You're okay. You don't have to run yourself into the ground. So, absolutely some shared suffering once in a while, push your limits a little bit, but that, super endurance events, they do come at a cost. And we see it even cardiac, the arrhythmias a lot of these endurance athletes get in their 40s and 50s that can be, life-changing or life-ending. So I think it's just important for people to understand that's a nuanced conversation, and it's not for everyone. So, and that's okay.
That's also part of that thing where you're going to age, and like, are you doing more detriment to your body than like good to it by doing stuff like that? Like, it's it needs more convo as well, but like, are you doing more damage than you are good? Because you're going to age, and you see these guys now, like we've been around long enough where we've watched some of these guys that like Goggins, like Cam Hanes, they've done amazing things. But now Cam's aging, and he still puts up impressive numbers in the gym and running, but you can see the hurt, you can see the toll that's actually taken on him. So like, where was that line? I don't know. It needs more combo, but you're 100% right. Don't worship it. Don't think that because everybody's like putting this 100 milers on a pedestal that you need to be a 100-mile racer. Just start, especially if you haven't even started by going out for a walk yet. Like, start with something small. Don't think you need to run 100 miles.
I have a conversation on here a lot with people who are coaches, athletic trainers, people that were high-level athletes themselves. The kind of blurred lines in school and college with youth athletes as far as squeezing out performance at the detriment of that young person's wellness and longevity. And you see a lot of people in their 30s and 40s in America with these woulda, coulda, shoulda stories that are now very deconditioned and unhealthy because they hit that wall. And so now I think that it's beautiful that we're starting to have this conversation. It's like, yeah, it's important to win, but you got to take care. I mean, if someone's had multiple surgeries and they're only 17, 18 years old, that's a problem. That's a broken system. So you can play, a bunch of sports, and you look at other places in the world that have world champions. They're not training their children like we do in the US. So at the beginning of this journey as well is another important conversation of get your kids into sports, let them play at whatever level they're good at. But if they start specializing and they're getting hurt, that young in age, that's a problem, because that injury could follow them the rest of their life.
And same into your career as well. I'm dealing myself with lower back problems and knee problems, not to the point of surgery, but they're to the point of I need to address them every day in how I train and my mobility work, just to relieve tightness and tension and, pain that is a direct result of not treating myself properly, in the career I had, and for like further back in sports. Like I grew up playing ice hockey at a very competitive rate as a kid, and riding dirt bikes at very competitive, in the summertime. And that all led into, this job that was a very physical job. And I did things, in the line trade. I did not treat my body because I was young. I could bounce back from it in a day, but it is catching up with me, not to the point of surgery, but to the point where I have to dress it every day. So like, it's a real thing. You do age and it sucks.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, the good thing is there are things that will help. There are proactive measures. There are, movement practices that will help with back pain and knee pain and all kinds of stuff as well. So that's the good news. But the bad news is the older you get, the more time and effort you have to spend in those things to still be an active, middle-aged person.
Yeah, 100%.
All right. Well, for people listening, where are the best places to find the Powerline podcast? And then what about yourself?
Myself, just my personal Instagram. I love connecting with people. If anyone has questions, especially military, looking for, a place in the trades, come chat with me. Open. Ryan W. Lucas is my Instagram. At Powerline Podcast is my podcast. Find it on all platforms, on YouTube, Spotify, all those platforms as well. Great. Like I use your term. It's a library of resources for people to learn about the industry and the trade and that sort of thing. So definitely go use that.
Brilliant. Well, I want to thank you so much, mate. It's been so great catching up again. Obviously very, a number of things have changed since we last spoke. So I think it's been incredible to kind of really hit some of these topics and kind of circle around and visit your world again. So I want to thank you so much for being so generous with your time and coming on the Behind the Shield podcast again.
Absolutely, sir. Love it.